He is a stand-up icon who is one of the top earning comedians today. He has entertained billions of people the world around, and now he has a new Netflix comedy special from a stadium in Los Angeles, California. It's Dodger Stadium. We're not going to knock him on that. Could have done it at Minute Maid. Neither here nor there. But it's called Stadium Fluffy, and the man, the myth, the legend himself, Gabriel Iglesias, joins us this morning. We talk about the special. We talk about the differences of having to do it in a theater as opposed to an arena, or this time a stadium, having to do comedy and that. We talk a little bit about the production elements. We had to talk a little pro wrestling. I know he's a massive wrestling fan, but he actually informs us about how wrestling helps shape his stand-up comedy. And we talk about that and so much more here on this episode of The Collection. So let's not waste any time. Let's get it started. Here is Gabriel Fluffy Iglesias. And he joins me now to talk the brand new Netflix comedy special, Stadium Fluffy, perhaps the greatest title in the history of titles. Gabriel Iglesias joins us this morning on the show. Gabriel, how you doing? Congratulations on the new special.
I am fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, I know, right? 2 words.
2 words, but it says so much in those 2 words, right? Stadium Fluffy. Of course, this is the special that you did live at Dodger Stadium, man. I mean, just talk to me about that, because I know that was a historic moment for yourself, but also for so many, for you to sell out Dodger Stadium to do this special. Let me ask you this: how was the show? And then was it always the plan to film the special from Dodger Stadium?
No, actually, the original plan was to film it in San Antonio, Texas. I was in the middle of a thing where Netflix wanted a special sooner than later, and I had not performed in over a year because, we were stuck at home. Mm-hmm. And so I says, well, all right. At the time when Netflix wanted this special, it wasn't really an option to perform anywhere but Florida or Texas, because those were the only 2 states that allowed live performances. So the plan was to do a show in San Antonio, and I wound up getting COVID in San Antonio. So plan B, hell of a plan B, was, hey, what do you think about this Dodger Stadium thing? And I'm like, well, if we could fill it, we should film it.
Man,
and we did.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, this is your first special in a couple of years, like post-pandemic, obviously, but I mean, even before the pandemic. This is your first special since 2019, I believe. The great thing about comedy too is that it can translate to a stadium full of people, and I want to ask you kind of about that, because when you come up as a comic, obviously you're coming up in the clubs and you're working on material, and then you go to the theaters or wherever, the improvs, the laugh factories, and so on and so forth. What's the difference? I mean, there's got to be a massive difference going from an intimate setting of maybe 1,500, even 5,000 people to a baseball stadium full of tens of thousands of people. How do you feel the comedy translates in that large venue?
I think that ultimately it comes down to technology, because it has to be like I wasn't nervous about my material. I wasn't worried about how well I was going to perform. I was worried about, hey, is the sound system going to be good enough to pull that off? Because, anytime you've seen a movie where it's a baseball stadium, you always get that super echo, that now batting, number. And so I thought, like, is it going to sound like that? And that's basically just a house system versus you bringing in your own, like, equipment that you borrowed from Metallica. So, so technology, like I said, a good sound system made all the difference in the world. And then I had to learn about a thing called delay towers. So like it was so massive they had to put delay towers in. I'm like, what is that? And they're like, it's so that you don't echo. I was like, good deal.
I like it. Stadium Fluffy, of course, on Netflix streaming. As far as the production element, because I'm just fascinated by it, because you brought up the delay towers. Normally, like when a comedian tapes a special, they do one or two shows typically, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what the presentation's all like. What was the production of this show? I mean, I don't think you got more than one opportunity to do it, right?
Actually, we did 2 nights.
You did 2 nights.
We did a Friday night and a Saturday night. I'm sorry, I want to say they went with the second night of taping. The first night we were still trying to get some of the kinks out, and definitely we had it dialed in by the second night. Fortunately, we had 2. If I had to rely only on one taping, I would have been very nerve-wracking. That's why I don't know how comedians can do those, specials live. Whenever you'd hear about, like HBO specials, sometimes comedians will go live, and I'm like, that is scary. That for me would be the scariest thing in the world, is to go live, because you never know what could go wrong.
Yeah, but I know that you're a wrestling fan, and Vince McMahon once said it can't go wrong if it's live, right? So whatever happens, happens. You know what? Speaking of that, I know that you're a wrestling fan. Down here, I'm here in Houston, Texas. I do a radio show with Booker T, the legend, the Hall of Fame legend, Booker T. I wanted to ask you, because Booker's a hilarious guy, and I find that there's a connection between stand-up comedy and pro wrestling, mainly on timing and audience reactions. Am I way off on this, or do you think that there's a connection?
You are right on point. As a matter of fact, a lot of the things that I do, I model after wrestling. And I know Booker, so you tell him I say hello, sucker.
So what do you mean you model it after wrestling? I'm fascinated by that.
I'm not, because you know what? It's not just a show. I mean, it's a presentation. So, like, for example, the way that I carry myself on stage, the way I engage with people, I'm a huge fan of wrestling. I either wanted to become a professional wrestler or a comedian when I was growing up. And I realized early on I couldn't handle pain, so I went the joke route. My shows, the way that I do them in the arenas, I model them after like shows like Monday Night Raw or SmackDown. The merchandise that I put out, it's like high quality. I order my stuff from the same companies and manufacturers that Vince does. I'm a huge fan of Vince's, by the way, because I think that he doesn't get enough credit for pulling off such an amazing product.
I agree with you. I mean, if you just look at the history of pro wrestling, where it went from to where it is now, similar to comedy, and even your comedy, right? Going from the small clubs to now playing stadiums, wrestling was never meant to be this massive worldwide entertainment form that it is. Do you have a great story or funny interaction? Do you have a funny interaction with any of the wrestlers or something that stands out to you?
I've had wrestlers come out to my events, and of course I go to wrestling events all the time, whether it's a Rumble or Mania. I've been to like 7 Manias. I actually got a chance to have a little face-off with The Miz, and basically it was me getting in and out of the ring, avoiding The Miz. But even just to jump in the ring, it takes some physical, and not just anybody can just jump up there. And I'm a big guy, but I didn't actually wrestle, but I got really close to it. And there was one time I got choked out by Roddy Piper. That's that doesn't happen every day. And there's one thing to sell it. There's one thing to actually be getting choked out. And I didn't have to sell it, because when he would put a move on you, you sell or I'm gonna sell it. So yeah.
Piper's got to protect the business.
Piper got to protect the business. He was legit. He was such an awesome person, and I can say that I fed him after he choked me.
There you go. I know you have so much to do. I have time for one final question for you. Talking about Stadium Fluffy, the new special on Netflix. As far as the time it took you to put together this material, I know you mentioned during the pandemic, a lot of places shut down. We here in Texas kind of pretended the pandemic never started. But for most places, you didn't have that opportunity to work on the material. How long did it take you to compile this? And was it more difficult preparing for this special than, say, ones previously?
The thing is that I had more than enough time because we had that extra year. So I had already had a set that was ready to be recorded. And then, of course, having a year to just do nothing but think, it gave me more time to just add on to what I already had. And so this special is not a 1-hour special. It's actually a 2-hour special. So it's the longest special that Netflix has put out, and it's the biggest one. So there's a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, man. And you know what? It was 2 hours, and only a stadium could hold that much funny from Fluffy. Hey, man,
Nice.
You see what I did there? I'm trying to sell the product. I'm trying to get it over.
I like what you did there. You got it over as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Well, you know what, man? Congratulations to you. Much success. We love you down here in Texas. Next time you're in Houston, me and Book, we're going to have to come check you out. But Gabriel Iglesias, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.